Wait, firing squad.
Yeah. Took 10% of the Vietnamese GDP.
I don't know. It just seems a bit more like heroic. Hi! Welcome to Wok Talks, where we walk through the hottest topics in Southeast Asia. Today we have a bit of a controversial topic. We're going to be talking about the death penalty in Southeast Asia. And with us, we have a special guest, Dana.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Okay, so first, I want to know your personal stances on the death penalty.
I'm supportive of it, but I have my reasons, which I'll share later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think that it should be abolished, so I'm not supportive of the death penalty.
I think that the death penalty should be imposed, but like less strictly than
Okay.
they've been doing so far.
Yeah, I do not think we should implement the death penalty as much.
Okay, so why does I feel like most of you guys are like leaning towards like no death penalty, but I'm like, I'm like quite supportive of it. So like maybe you guys want to try and convince me why you guys think that way.
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. Like for example, in Vietnam right now, I think this year they've reduced the crimes that you have to do to get the death penalty. And I think that that's like a really good start, especially because I think the death penalty should only be imposed to people who have like a really big impact on different people's lives. You know, like for example, like murder or you know, those
Like violent
violent crimes. But for crimes such as selling weed, I don't think they should do the death penalty.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like, wait, so like for now in Vietnam, like what is the death penalty used for?
Embezzlement and accepting bribes, espionage and actions to overthrow the government, producing or selling counterfeit medicines, illegal transport of narcotics, jeopardizing peace and triggering invasive wars, and vandalizing state property. Yeah, and also the accepting bribes part. I think the Vietnamese government, we're having like a crackdown on government bribery, especially after the embezzlement case of the woman, because they were only supposed, each person, like most they can control is 30% of the bank, but she had control over 90% of the bank, and she was taking out illegal loans to fund her own company, and that she was doing that by bribing the higher ups so that they wouldn't report it. So now they're having a huge crackdown on politicians.
So now if the politicians are corrupt, they're gonna
not they would have to like resign. Like I think in the past 2 years there have been 2 new like presidents. Because they had to step down or something like that. I don't know. Yeah.
Wait, so this lady, was she like a politician or she's a business owner?
Yeah, she was a business. She does real estate and she sells like shells, like you know the gas.
Gas. Okay.
So she was just taking the bank loans and keeping on investing on her real estate.
So then why did she get the death penalty as compared to like other politicians that had to step down?
Well, because she, this is like an estimate that I've read online, but she basically took 10% of the Vietnamese GDP.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So it's
okay.
It's like the extent of
Yeah,
it,
it's the
like how
extent of
much
it.
you.
It's the degree.
And that was, I think, one of the breaking points for the Vietnamese government as well, for them to make those new laws and become more transparent. Even though like that kind of led to a mistrust because Vietnam's a huge trading hub. It kind of led to mistrust internationally, but now they're trying to work on transparency, so like long-term gains. Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like the main reason why people impose death penalty, as you mentioned, is really for those heinous, violent crimes, like the extent that they don't just affect a certain group, but they affect the whole population, right? But I feel like it's also used not
it's not always used fairly, or you can't always
Yeah.
ensure that there's 100% justice.
Okay.
So I think not just in the Philippines, but in a lot of countries, if the government is too centralized or they value like a certain opinion only, then it's a bit more difficult to say that, oh, for sure this person got death penalty because they really were going to cause a lot of harm.
Yeah.
And so it's not just what crimes, but the extent to like how they die. Yeah, because I feel like something like we all agree on is that like all guilty people deserve to be punished, and that only guilty people should be punished, right? Like those who are innocent shouldn't receive anything.
Yeah.
And the third is like what you are accused of should be proportionate to your punishment, right? So I think at the end of the day, it's also a discussion about the proportion and like the extent to how you should be punished depending on what you did.
Yeah. But like, okay, now that the Philippines doesn't have death penalty, was there ever like a rise in like violent crimes? Or like, is there an issue with that, for example?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the Philippines, we've had death penalty throughout the years. So I believe, like this is from recent research that I saw. So I think in around the 90s, we had death penalty, and this was especially prevalent during the like dictatorship era. So under former President Marcos. So because the government was under a dictatorship, of course, there was that central opinion that anyone who would oppose them would sort of get punished more frequently. So it was used as a tool to silence people. And while crime was lower, it's also because the entire government was more like military leaning in that sense. So it's not because the death penalty specifically was there. But then because of all that like abuse of the death penalty and that corruption, it was taken out in 2006, I think.
Yeah,
They
2006.
they removed the death penalty. And a lot of people say that, oh, when there's no death penalty, violent crime will go up. But actually, that relationship is not always, it's not actually 100% certain. And there's a lot of other factors as well. Yeah. So things like, but they tried imposing it again actually in 2016 because like the former president was really cracking down on drugs. So you might have heard of the 2016 Philippine drug war. So the president and a lot of people in Congress was trying to push for death penalty for all these drug pushers and really like kingpins. But a lot of people, I think also because the Philippines is a Catholic country, a lot of people said that it was inhumane to impose something like that, and we can't ensure that the government is 100% fair in implementing that.
I think it's like what Dana said, it has to do with innocence and proportionality to your crime. So personally in Singapore, I've seen a lot of cases where I personally feel that the crime committed is not proportional to the punishment that they get. In Singapore, it's mostly drug offenses that are taken very seriously. Which I understand why it started, because when Singapore was being established, drug violence and drug crimes were at an all-time high, and to bring in reform, they put in those like barriers and things. But I feel like nowadays there's this one case where a man was carrying in about like 1,000 grams of cocaine or cannabis. I'm not too sure, but and then he got sentenced to death. So what I thought was you're cracking down on like a courier who's like transporting the drugs, not the actual person who's producing or supplying or anything like that. So you're trying to take out the middleman. But the thing is, for most of these people, they get paid like a minimum amount. So they have multiple people doing that. So just taking one like pawn on a very low level out of this whole like drug system won't really remove the drug trade. But obviously it seems to be working in Singapore because the drug offenses and drug crimes
It's a lot
lower than other countries. But I feel like the punishment can be changed personally.
But like, okay, for example, Singapore, right? Because I'm also Singaporean. Like, because we only have jurisdiction over like when people come in, right? So like, and I don't think there are any like drug productions in Singapore because the government obviously like cracks down a lot on it. Like if like the government wouldn't have jurisdiction over like the production of drugs overseas, for example. So then like technically the only like the furthest they can go is the middleman. And yeah, I don't know if there's any other way that we can prevent this problem from happening specifically if we don't have such a harsh punishment, like you know, like the death penalty.
So you think that the death penalty is really a deterrent to a lot of these violent crimes?
Yeah, I think in Singapore they did like some survey a few years ago, right? That like because of the death penalty, like when they survey like the other Southeast Asian countries, whether they're less likely to want to smuggle drugs, no, it really like increased. I think to like was it 70 or 80%?
Okay.
Something like that. Like I heard a statistic, something like that.
Okay.
So it becomes like quite high of a deterrence.
Okay.
But then you see, even with the death penalty, you can get drugs in Singapore, so it still happens. So I don't want to like think like if we remove it or like become more lenient
It
on
might
it,
become more rampant.
yeah, like
Like
it
this.
will open the floodgates, you know, and then I don't know what will happen to like a country that was that mainly relies on its human capital to like survive.
Yeah.
What I think I'm trying to get at is that like because the death penalty is so harsh, it could deter like these vulnerable communities to not even want to touch it to begin with,
Just because of the risk.
just because of
what
the
could
risk of
happen.
what could happen, and maybe give the like proper like social services the opportunity to come in and actually help them instead of letting them like turn to this and then get addicted and let the whole cycle like perpetuate, you know.
Yeah. But I feel like death penalty, yeah, like it's good you mentioned about like drugs and system. I feel like it doesn't just span that as well, right? So I feel like there's a lot of other crimes. I think like you mentioned, right, in Vietnam they might use death penalty for like corruption and graft and corruption, right?
Yeah.
And I think in the Philippines that's what they're trying to do as well. So they kind of see they want the death penalty for drugs because like what they see in Singapore, they think it's a deterrent. But again, as you mentioned, it's a very different situation. Whereas where it's really the middleman in Singapore, but in the Philippines, we really have this drug production, and so targeting those specific production and these organized crime is more important than just implementing a death penalty and hoping that the vulnerable communities are scared enough of it, because they could also be pressured into those. But aside from that, like implementing death penalty for like graft and corruption, it could also be very susceptible to manipulation and abuse of it. Well, I think it's a good deterrent actually for corruption because, like you mentioned, that's a huge scandal of stealing 10% of the country's GDP. That's on a whole other scale. I think in the Philippines, people are quite familiar with the recent flood control scandals, and I think something to that extent, yes, it's very severe, but just implementing a death penalty when those who give the punishment are in control of
Because
who
it's
gets it.
corrupt also.
Yeah, so
Like,
it depends on the systems in which you implement it as well. So I feel like more than just looking at death penalty, we should also look at why certain crimes would deserve it and like how we think of it.
And
What do
like
you guys
it's a
think?
country by country basis, right?
Yeah.
Like that just because it works in Singapore,
Mm.
whether we agree to disagree,
Mm.
like it may not work for other countries, especially those that have the drug productions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that like why I would trust Singapore to do it is because I think there's also a high trust in government. Although like it has recently dropped, but it's still relatively high. Comparatively quite high to the rest of like the other countries, I guess. So I do get that like you do need trust in government to not abuse the system. Like I sometimes think like to to be in the position of like Minister Shamagam, which is our Minister of Law and like Home Affairs in Singapore. Like it's actually very difficult because I know there was a case, right, that like there was this guy with low IQ that it was a huge case. And then I'm pretty sure, I don't know if there were protests. Were there protests?
No, but there was a lot of international attention and a lot of international bodies of welfare and things like that. They got involved to campaign for his
petition.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in the end, the
It
government
still did it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they still have control over anything.
Yeah. I'm not sure if he really did have a low IQ or it was a way for him to plea out of it.
Yeah.
But I do know that the argument was that like if they let this slide, like other smugglers will start using like low IQ and then they will have to use this case as an example.
Yeah, as a precedent.
Or something like that because that's how law works.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think a couple years ago they took a survey
Yeah.
of people for and against the death penalty, especially when there are a lot of rising cases and a lot of international attention brought to Singapore.
Yeah.
And I think it was almost 80 or 90% that was still in favor of death penalty because growing up you see that
It works.
enforcing it works to some
Affects.
extent. Like,
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's very
Yeah.
good.
But again, there's still a lot of divide, and because of like social media and international involvement, it's become a big question of ethics
Yeah.
and how far are you willing to go to keep, this
Wait, can
community
I
safe?
clarify?
Yeah.
Do you guys think the death penalty? Because I know for you it's like based on like religion as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
completely
it's-
against.
Yeah.
But for you guys, like, are you guys completely against the death penalty, or do you think like violent crimes you should still get death penalty because it's proportionate, like life or life?
Yeah, I think if it's proportionate, then yeah, I would support the death penalty.
So if someone were to murder or like commit genocide, or
Yeah, then yes, to
Yeah.
use the death penalty.
Okay.
I think it depends. Personally, no. I feel like life imprisonment could also be, possible
An option.
Yeah. Obviously, it's not the same as getting rid of somebody completely and stopping them, but they're also in like a contained environment where they're not going to ever do anything like that ever again or have the opportunity to do anything like that again. So
Yeah.
in a sense, you're stopping that one individual completely
Yeah.
from committing any other further crimes.
Yeah.
So in both cases. So I think
Did
it's
you
just
say it was more economical?
yeah.
So I think I've heard a lot of arguments for capital punishment that supposedly death penalty is more cost efficient. Not a very business term, but because it would make sense, right? Instead of keeping someone for the next 20, 30 years of their life and your taxes are funding them in the jail.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, rather just get rid of them,
Yeah.
and they're just gone.
Yeah.
But I don't know the exact research or evidence behind it, but I do know that in general it's been seen across countries that life imprisonment is actually more cost effective than the death penalty itself. And I don't know, maybe it's because when you get death penalty, you have to go through more legal processes. The actual implementation might be more, because you have to be more ethical, right? So you have to be more specific about it, a bit more particular. So maybe that could lead to additional. Yeah, so we are having our live fact checking here as well.
Doing it right now.
Yeah, we do our best to be educational here.
Yeah, I think you're right. Eliminates the extensive decades-long legal appeals process. Because obviously, like, they will be in jail for a certain amount of time before they go.
Yeah. And it's not like they, as soon as they commit a crime, they're automatically sentenced. There's obviously
And they will keep trying to appeal.
Yeah.
Correct. And you hear a lot of stories like in America where, I'm death row inmate for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Or you'd also hear cases of someone was, like they got the chair, but then 10 years after, the appeal actually went through and they were found to be innocent of the crime, and
But they already.
yeah, but they're already gone, and so you can't. With that, the finality
Yeah.
of the death penalty is what I think I struggle with a lot, and I think what a lot of people struggle with it. It's not just the ethics or the proportionate. It's that if you do get it wrong, there's no going
Taking back.
Yeah.
They can't take back a lot.
Yeah.
So do you think
Yeah.
of the chair? I know each Southeast Asian nation has like a specific way that they, you know,
Oh.
do
Yeah.
said thing. But so I know in Singapore it's by hanging.
Only.
Yeah, only in Indonesia it's firing squad. In Vietnam it's
Wait, firing squad.
yeah,
Really?
Only?
In.
majority I think. And then
Oh,
Vietnam
wow.
it's lethal injection.
Oh,
So-
well, that seems to be the most painless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
What do you
yeah, I
guys
wouldn't know
think?
about that. I don't know how it feels in that.
Yeah.
So like my question is, what do you guys think is like the most ethical, or what would you rather?
If
I'll
I was
prefer
dead,
it.
Is the
no.
case
I'll
like
prefer it.
yeah.
I don't know. Like personally, me, I think like lethal injection, cause it just seems more medical and quiet and peaceful. I don't know if I wanted like peaceful, but I don't know. I feel like firing squad is kind of like
Oh, yeah, no
blazing
firing
glory.
squad.
I don't know.
Wait, but like, what if it doesn't work?
Then
If it doesn't work, you'll be like, wait, I changed.
wait, what's the likelihood though that
It
that like the
doesn't
lethal
work.
injection doesn't work? Like
Yeah.
is there
Isn't it- I don't know,
accuracy?
but I always thought that once you inject, it takes a while for it to actually take effect. So
Yeah.
you're just sitting there waiting
To die.
Yeah.
I mean, like they could always play like like a
Oh
movie or
no.
something.
7.2% to 35% of the cases it doesn't work, so they just keep injecting you.
Oh, that's terrible.
Okay, yeah. So firing
Yeah.
squad, at least it's like no, I
Yeah,
feel like
I mean, firing squad is like the most sure way.
yeah.
No, wait, but you can get hanged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like hanging, because sometimes
Like,
don't-
you just
you
have a
don't
really
get
good
stressed
like throw strength.
yeah, no, because there are cases that instead of like hanging, they just leave you there. But sometimes like your back breaks and you fall before you die.
Yeah.
So you still get severely injured and you feel everything. But at least like firing squad, I think, because I also have this notion of firing squad, because like in the Philippines, like our national heroes like Jose Rizal, and so like he was like this is in colonial times, like he was killed by the Spanish via firing squad, and it's like the famous is that because he was like political prisoner, so they didn't want him to like face them, because I think normally firing squad you face the
face
you
the
face them.
Really?
Oh, I think
I
so.
think you face the wall.
Oh yeah, sorry, you face the wall.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
him, he wanted to like
Face
rebel,
them.
so he faced them. So right before he like turned around and then like so he got fired from the front. I don't know. It just seems a bit more like heroic.
Yeah.
What was it? I was curious because I feel like all the Southeast Asian countries, except from Singapore, they've been decreasing the amount of death.
Yeah.
But is that also because of trade? Because Singapore is already like a really developed country. It depends less on trade with European countries, whereas like for example Vietnam, we decreased our criteria for a death penalty. Is that because we wanted to align more with the European yeah? I was thinking maybe.
For us, I don't think it's trade because Singapore relies.
Yeah, maybe
only
not,
on
maybe
it.
not, yeah.
But I think the government is already established to the sense.
Yeah, I mean,
Not that they don't care, but I don't think they're very like moved by international attention
yeah.
as compared to other countries that you know
Yeah.
are dependent on that.
And even I feel like I'm not sure. Can you check this?
Yeah.
But there are like clauses in the trade between Europe and Southeast Asia where they talk about the death penalties as well in order to trade. But yeah.
Actually, that's interesting.
The EU includes human rights as an essential element in its PCAs with
Yeah,
Vietnam
Vietnam and Malaysia.
Mandate that bilateral trade preferences and cooperation instruments.
Wait,
Who can be suspended in the event of serious systematic human rights violations.
wait, so for which countries are these? Is it like
Vietnam and Malaysia, it says here.
yeah, because I think those countries specifically are very like reliant
Yeah.
on like
But what's really funny to me is most of these Southeast Asian nations were colonies of either the Portuguese, Spanish, British. But the thing is, like in the UK now that I'm studying law, it's been abolished for a really long time
Yeah.
now. But
Since when?
I'll just
Sorry.
Yeah, but it's abolished here, but all of the nations that they were colonized by still have it.
Suspended in 1965 and permanently ended in
Ah.
69.
Okay.
It still remained legally defined as a punishment.
Yeah.
I see.
So 1998 is when they abolished it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that was quite interesting.
Why actually? I wonder why. Like, why the colonies?
Maybe it's because this is just my thoughts, but maybe it's because once obviously they got independence or anything, when they
Yeah.
start building a new nation, they need some sort of structure. So they probably relied on the structure
They just
that was
copied.
already implemented,
Okay.
and they just built on that, and they saw that it
Yeah.
worked, so then they just continued with that.
But do you think it's also because like Asian countries tend to be more conservative in a way? Like, do you think it's the conservativeness that also like aligned with this and then it just continued on? Like,
It's more like cultural differences,
yeah, the cultural alignment.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, because like when you're young, like when you're naughty or something, your parents will hit you.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
it's like taboo here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would never.
When I tell people ask me, would you ever beat your kids? I'm like,
But not beat. I think it's because in English, like you'd say beat, but maybe in our languages, it's not really beat. Because when
It's
you
like
think of
hit.
beat, yeah, it's more like
it's not
spank.
like it's not
yeah.
like
When you hear beat, it's
It's
like
like
assault. It's like
yeah.
I don't think anyone's doing that to their like 3-year-old, you know.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. As a kid, I was just spanked like on the hand, and like that's it.
Yeah. Also,
It's not. Like,
disclaimer: assault is not allowed. On
Yeah,
violence.
not allowed.
No,
No.
it's not allowed. but, like,
Violence, yeah.
we don't condone
They
violence.
will, yeah.
But it's just like to which extent you're like
Yeah.
beat.
You're okay, like it's
Yeah.
socially okay.
Yeah.
But I feel like not a lot of it, but it's gonna change continuously because like mostly like we, for example, we're going to the UK to study, going to the US to study. So then we're probably gonna be more progressive in our thinking as well. you
Yeah.
know? So I feel like when we return to our country, that might also be a little bit of like a, we can now shift the culture a little bit.
Yeah. No, I
Hopefully.
think like globalization as well, so
Yeah.
the shift times I feel like that penalty is too easy.
It's
It's
too
an
easy of a way out.
Yeah, too easy of a way out.
Because you want someone who's guilty to.
Face the repercussions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's
Don't you feel like sometimes your family gets more?
Affect.
yeah, the family
affected
gets
than-
more affected
yeah.
than the person.
If you're like a
That's
serial
true.
rapist, like
Yeah.
like you care.
Yeah.
Okay. You care if like society thinks you're bad. Like you already know that. But like
But
your
it will
family-
cost you jobs.
That's
It will
what
cost you your
exactly
livelihood.
what is it? Like your family's gonna bear the repercussions.
Yeah.
Right?
But still, even then, like if they're in prison, like their family's still gonna get harassed and things like that.
Yeah.
You know? So it's gonna affect them either way.
No, whether you're in prison or death penalty, though, I feel like it would be broadcasted that they got that punishment and were convicted.
That's
Yeah.
I know. Coming back to like death penalty,
Yeah.
that one like episode I watched about inside Singapore prisons, it was a lot about the families outside. There's this one girl who was like 2 years old when her father got executed, and at that time the drug
Situation was really high.
yeah, so comparatively, like now he wouldn't have gotten it if he did it
Yeah.
now at this point.
Yeah.
And it's quite sad because when she was growing up, she had to like tell people like, oh no, my father is just on a business trip. It's not like, you know, he passed away because of this or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think growing up, like children of people who do this or like
Yeah.
spouses or family members, it affects them a lot more than we would think.
Yeah.
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 Last question.
Yeah.
Alright, last question.
Do you personally think it should be like more importance should be given to rehabilitation and like, you know, helping that person out of a situation like that, or like direct punishment? Because I know not about drugs or anything, but like rapists and things like that, they have a lot of internalized like childhood traumas or something. Like they personally might have been like gone through something like
Yeah.
that. and that's why they act like that. So do you think it's more important to rehabilitate them or like just punish them or both?
I feel like I read this somewhere where like a crazy percentage of rapists, murderers, and things like that, they have all faced like neglect and abuse in their childhood.
Yeah.
So if you just manage to cut that off and then help the next generation, I feel like that'd be good. So the people who do the crimes, I feel like they should get punished. But the people who got the crimes done to them, they should probably get some rehabilitation and things like that.
I think we should focus on preventative measures. Like obviously, like even though I'm for the death penalty, like I don't want it to be enacted this frequently because I still think life is important, and yes, it's a very difficult decision to make. I think it will be in everyone's best interest if it doesn't happen. So like obviously rehab and like preventative measures are still like my number one go-to.
Yeah.
I think, for me it's really preventative because I like what you said that the person already committed the crime, so rehabilitating them, it just feels impossible because I mean you can't stop it, that it already happened. So I feel like there's not as much, like it's not as productive to try to help that person assimilate because the goal of rehabilitation is assimilate back into society. But I don't think most people would want them to assimilate back.
Yeah. They would feel danger, but unless I mean it's the extent of the crime as well. You know? But if it's like murder, then just keep them in there.
I do think like rehab would work to a certain extent. Like it depends on how much the person wants to change.
improve.
Like if the person doesn't want to change, then you're also
There's no
point.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, that's all for today's episode. Thank you for listening. If you guys are not on the go and not able to watch us on YouTube, you can listen to us on Spotify. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to us. And
Thank you, Dana, for coming on our
Of
podcast.
course, it's very fun.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Bye.